Okay, good afternoon, everybody. If you're logged on, you should be seeing our the homepage here of this Zoom event. Welcome to what I think is a first, definitely for CRMC. We decided to introduce this project via Zoom event so that you could watch from the comfort of your desks. If you're looking at your video windows, you should be able to see our team here at CRMC. But we're going to kind of launch right into a PowerPoint presentation that you should be seeing the homepage for, the first page for on your screen right now. And in the first couple of slides, we're going to just go over this format and how we're going to interact with each other. For the most part, this is going to be a one-way delivery here. There's a chat box, but mostly you'll be listening to us, and we hope to not take up too much of your time. But we're really excited about this project, so thank you for joining us. My name's Caitlin Chafee. I am a policy analyst here at CRMC, and I'm working with a fabulous team whose logos you can see on this first slide, and we're calling this effort the Shoreline Adaptation Inventory and Design Project. So we're working with Sea Grant, both the Marine Affairs Institute at the Roger Williams School of Law and the Coastal Resources Center at URI, Save the Bay, and we're the PI on this project. And so we worked together to submit a proposal, and we got funding from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and with a NOAA Coastal Resilience Grant to implement this project. So I'm going to give a brief overview. I'm going to, let's see, advance here. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. I'm going to go, we're going to give a little overview of the format here, the Zoom format, a couple of housekeeping items. Then I'm going to launch into a description of this overall project. And we've got a few items that we've developed, some tools to help in project nomination. We'll go over that after we finish the core PowerPoint here. And then we will take questions in the form of entries to our chat box, which Teresa Crean is going to talk about in a second. So again, if you could keep your lines muted, that'd be great. We want to hear from you, but we don't want chaos. So I'm going to hand it over to Teresa, who's going to give it a little bit of a Zoom introduction so we know how to interact with each other.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. So Caitlin already asked everyone to mute your microphone so that we are broadcasting one way, and we appreciate that so we don't have a lot of chatter on this end. And I think, again, to reiterate what Caitlin just shared, that we're going to manage your questions by using the chat box. So if you use the go up to either the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen, you see a box that shows up. There is a chat function, so you'll have a pop-up box. You can also look at the participants and see who else is on the line. And we're going to ask that you ask any questions you have along the way. Just type them in the chat box, and at the end of the meeting, we'll go back and we will review the different questions that were submitted. We're also happy to follow up after this meeting. We are going to share this, we're recording this meeting right now, so we're going to share the recording with folks who could not attend after this meeting. So all of those questions that you'll ask in the chat box will be part of the recording. So we really just want to emphasize you guys to use the chat box to ask your questions instead of using the raise hand function, which in other broadcasts you can actually speak into using the raise hand function. So we're just going to keep this to typed questions. I think that covers everything on this slide. Is there anything else anyone else wants to add?
No, just if you're having trouble with your audio, you can't hear us, you can enter those kinds of comments too into the chat box. We'll try to address any issues. Great.
And are you monitoring the chat box?
Yeah, we've got.
Excellent.
All right. So I'm going to kind of launch into our PowerPoint presentation. First, introducing our team. So we've got Wenley Ferguson from Save the Bay, and Wenley, if you say, if you introduce yourself, you might pick up on the video here.
Hi, I'm Wenley Ferguson, and worked with Caitlin and partners for a long while on this project and doing some of the adaptation identification.
And you just heard from Teresa Crean at URI CRC Sea Grant. Next to me is Janet Friedman.
Hi, this is Janet Friedman.
Hopefully you're seeing us as we speak. I'm Caitlin Chafee. Joining us remotely here too is Julia Wyman from Roger Williams University, Marine Affairs Institute, Sea Grant Legal Program, and working with her is Reed Porter, also from Roger Williams. And we've got Jacob Citronbaum, who developed some of our online tools for us. He's with Save the Bay. We also have Kim Korioth, who is a, Kim, if you just introduce.
Yes, I can
say hi.
Yeah, I'm a SUNY ESF master's student, and I'll be working with the team as well.
Great. So that's Kim. We also have a couple of municipal partners who helped us with the proposal development and are providing some of the non-federal match. So Bristol and Providence. We thank those communities. And again, our funding source is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We are doing this through a coastal resilience planning grant. So about the project. So this, again, is a planning project. So our goal here is to identify and inventory shoreline adaptation projects. And so that we're all working with the same definition, we're defining these as projects that address the impacts of coastal storms, sea level rise, and stormwater, things like erosion, flooding, loss of habitats, shoreline public access impacts. And these are projects that help to improve the resilience and safety of our shoreline while increasing the benefits of natural systems. Things like water quality improvement and enhancement of fish and wildlife habitat. So really the main idea behind these kinds of projects, how we're defining them, is that they have multiple benefits. They enhance public safety, but they also enhance natural habitat. They may include public shoreline access components, again, and restore those functions that those natural systems provide. So that's really kind of the core idea behind how we're categorizing this type of project for this planning effort. They may include upgrades to infrastructure, but they also have other benefits. And so they're really kind of a value add rather than just simply, gray solutions. So that's kind of the working definition that we're using for this effort. And the reason that we're focusing on these types of projects is because there is an increasing amount of funding available for them. So we saw in November when the Green Economy and Clean Water Bond passed, there's a section in that that speaks to coastal resilience. There's also funding for riverine projects. But that category of project is defined very similarly to what we just showed you. And so there's state funding available, the funding that's supporting this planning effort. There's also implementation funding through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation through that Coastal Resilience Program. So they just issued another RFP this year. That should be a continuing program. And so that RFP really speaks to these projects that both enhance resilience, protect natural systems, but also protect coastal communities. And so there's that kind of combination of the built environment, human populations, and natural systems. So we know we have a lot of potential projects out there. We just want to make sure that we're ready when these opportunities arise. And I should mention that the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank also, right now, they're doing a municipal resilience program to try to help cities and towns identify these types of projects along with other infrastructure and resilience projects. And they're another potential source of funding, and who knows what else is going to come down the road. And so we want to make sure we're well positioned as a state with shovel-ready projects. So that kind of brings us to our major project goals for this particular effort. Creating a robust vetted statewide inventory of completed and potential shoreline adaptation projects. So the potential part is key. We really want to identify projects we can fund in the future. Under the project, we actually do have some funding to take a subset of the projects identified and start moving forward with those. So creating engineered designs and bringing them through permitting so that they are truly shovel ready. So again, when those funding opportunities arise, that we can move forward. And then the Roger Williams team is going to be working on municipal legal guidance for project implementation. So we'll be asking for your feedback on what are the legal issues that you encounter when you try to do this type of work. And so we've got that aspect as well. So those are kind of our overall project goals. How are we doing this? So first of all, we're starting by documenting what we know is out there. And so we've created an online inventory in Google Maps, and we'll be going through that in more detail a little bit later and demonstrating it. But we started with mapping the projects that have been done. So we've worked with many of you possibly out there, many municipalities on shoreline resilience. And so we wanted to kind of take stock of what projects exist that are completed. And also through those past efforts, we've kind of had running lists of potential projects that we've all had in mind. And so the goal to begin with, as a foundation, we've tried to capture that. And this picture is a screenshot of that map, and we'll be going through it in a moment. But what we've done is we've taken those projects and put them in a map. On the left here, you'll see the categories that we've divided them into. And I'll be talking a little bit more about those categories in a second. But so this is something that you can go to, you can browse, you can look at what is mapped in your town. If you feel, that things needed to be added to or removed, that's why we're here. So we're going to give you some tools to do that. But right now it lives in Google Maps. The idea is that once we've refined this and vetted it with municipal folks a bit more, that this will be a more sophisticated ArcGIS online tool that anybody can access. So that's our first tool here. I'm going to go through a little bit of these project categories. And these are based on basically work that we've already done. There's definitely room to expand beyond these. Many projects are going to involve more than one type of activity, so they may fall under more than one category, but in general, these categories describe the primary activity at each site. So we have pavement removal. So Save the Bay has done a ton of these, what we're calling end of road retrofits, where they remove pavement at the shoreline, replacing it with vegetation. There may be a stormwater management component. But pavement removal is kind of the main activity, and you can see this example. They've restored some shoreline vegetation there. Stormwater management is also its own category. So this example is in North Kingstown, where a stormwater infiltration bioretention basin was constructed at the end of the bike path where there was some erosion. Obviously some pavement was removed there as well, but this is a good example of stormwater management. Structure removal is another category. So this is Grinnell's Beach, where one of our field trips is going to be taking place. In this particular example, an old gas station structure was removed. And again, there were other components to this project, but this was one of the major components. So, removing structures or parts of structures, or potentially relocating structures farther inland. This is just another example of structure removal, a different type of structure. This is the damaged boardwalk at Warwick City Beach and at Warwick City Park. So that was removed and the beach was regraded. Natural feature restoration is kind of its own category. So these are projects where the main activity is really revegetation. So, and again, Save the Bay has done a ton of these where it's dune vegetation, whether that's been eroded away or it's been human foot traffic that's degraded it. We've done projects on Napa Tree Point where it's just a matter of excluding pedestrian traffic so the area can regenerate, or actually actively restoring the dune. But it could involve other shoreline habitats, buffers, shrub habitats. Road relocation and limiting vehicle access is its own category. The aerial photos here are from Sepauwett Point, where we worked with DEM. Save the Bay and DEM worked together to relocate a parking area. So in the top photo, you'll see the arrows pointing to where cars were parking down the beach, and the vehicular traffic was damaging the dune and beach system there. And so in the bottom picture, you can see that a line of stones was installed to prevent folks from driving on the beach, and that rectangle is a relocated parking area that was built further inland. So it's both kind of restoring that habitat and allowing for inland migration of that habitat at the same time, while getting cars out of areas that are flooded. You can see in the top photo that the bottom of, that's in that picture, that's an agricultural field. It's already flooded. So that's a limiting of vehicular access, but it also could mean, you know, relocating roads or closing roads that are regularly flooded. Bank regrading and stabilization is another project category. So this is Stillhouse Cove in Cranston. And you can see in the top picture where there was damage, and that was Hurricane Irene,
Sandy.
or that was Sandy. So this is Sandy damage in the top picture that was addressed by regrading the bank and securing it with biodegradable materials, in this case, envelopes made of natural coconut fibers and biodegradable materials, and then it was covered over and vegetated. So that's just an example of that kind of project. I think we've got another one. I believe this is Jamestown. So an example of kind of using those natural materials to revegetate an eroding bank. So natural materials, kind of a recurring theme here. We added the category of culvert redesign. This example in the picture is Rocky Point. These are projects that either a culvert is a problem because it's restricting tidal connectivity to a habitat, or it's causing problems upstream. It may be causing flooding during rainstorms. And so looking at those as opportunities to address those impacts and restore the habitat. And then we also included this category of utility removal and relocation. We have examples of utility poles that are in areas of erosion and they're at risk. Obviously, these projects take coordination with the utility, but we wanted to identify them, not just to have that in there, but you know, there may be other opportunities near these locations, and that's one consideration that's going to have to be addressed to complete other projects. So those are also mapped. So those are, that's pretty much the project categories that we're working with. There's opportunity to add to those. And so we've created these two methods for you to nominate sites. So these are nominating, and we're talking about nominating potential projects. If you have any completed projects, we'd be interested in those as well. But this is really about nominating potential sites for consideration for funding in the future. And so the first tool that we've developed is this JOT form. And we'll be going through that in just a moment, but that's an online tool. And then we've got the My Coast Rhode Island app, and that's a phone-based tool that you can use to take pictures and create project profiles. And so we'll go through those in a second, but we've developed those two tools. And so in the Shoreline Adaptation Inventory nomination form, there is an other category. So if your project doesn't quite fit under any of those categories that have already been established, there's room to kind of add to that. We also wanted to let you know about two upcoming events. We'll be taking this kind of introduction into the field next week. So on Wednesday afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock at Mill Cove Road in Warwick, the project team will be there. We'll be talking about a completed end of road project that was done there by Save the Bay. And then we're gonna be heading over to Strand Ave to look at a potential project site. So the idea is more of this kind of introductory information, but really looking at on the ground sites and thinking of getting folks thinking about how these categories might apply to their site and how they consider what kind of activities might be eligible. And then Thursday, we'll be in Tiverton at Grinnell's Beach at 9 o'clock. And we'll be heading over to to look at a completed project. That was the gas station removal project I showed the picture of. And then we'll be moving over to Portsmouth to Common Fence Point. So we have kind of a West Bay and East Bay version of the in-person introduction of this project. So we encourage you, if you can, to join us out in the field. It's also a chance to meet the project team and to ask us questions in person. So what's next? What are we asking of all of you? Well, if you're interested and if this appeals to you and you think there might be an opportunity in your municipality or your neighborhood, we ask you to take a look at our shoreline inventory, the Google map. we'll be sending, we're going to be publishing that right after we wrap up here, and we're going to be sending that link out as a follow-up to this presentation. We ask you to go in and take a look at what we've mapped so far, and get back to us with any input you have. If there are projects on there that you feel should not be in your town, then let us know. We encourage you to come out in the field with us next week if you can. There should have been in one of your invitations a link to register for those. And then we ask you to look at our online nomination tools. If you have other sites, we'd love to know about them. So use that jot form or the MyCoast app, or just contact us with edits to the existing inventory. So that pretty much wraps up my presentation and overall introduction. Again, here's our wonderful project team. That's my email. Feel free to contact me directly with any questions. But I think we're going to move into now a demo of the inventory map and the jot form and the MyCoast app. So I'm going to see if I can stop sharing, right? And then I'm going to bring up this one.
You have to share again. Go back up and do share.
Share.
Yep. And then Shoreline Adaptation.
Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, so you all should be seeing a Google map right now. How's that looking? Good, okay. So this is what the Shoreline Adaptation inventory map looks like. It's like any other Google map. You can pan around. Over here in the legend are those project categories we talked about. So, and you can expand and collapse those, but we have pavement removal, stormwater management, structure removal, all of those categories. In each category, first listed will be these blue circles with diamonds in them. Those represent completed projects for every category. So if you're looking at a blue circle, it's a completed project. And we both wanted to document the work that had been done and give folks examples of what we're talking about for each project type. So if we go to, let's see, we can go, I think I had it, yeah. So if we go to Grinnell's Beach, which is one of our site visits, we've got a couple of different projects going on there, but one of them is, yeah, we've got, okay. So once you click on a project, its profile comes up in the legend here. So it's going to tell you where it is, a brief description, and in some of the completed projects, it will link you to a Google Doc that's going to give you a little more information. So in this case, we can link to this, and it will redirect us to this, this little PowerPoint slide that shows exactly what was done. So the parking area was relocated, and this is all information that's been compiled by Save the Bay. So you can see exactly the activities that took place. They removed the gas station. There was a buffer planting area, and the pavement was moved back. So that's not available for every single entry in here, but for many of the completed projects, it is. So then we can go to, we can select on the other types of icons to see potential projects that we've identified. So this one happens to be a pavement removal opportunity that's been documented. And this, you know, there's no photos associated with this. This is just kind of a location where it's been identified by Save the Bay that this might be a potential project. And so this has been done for pretty much the whole state. We've got some work to do on Block Island, but you can see that we've got a pretty good starting point of a list of projects here. So again, we encourage you to go in and take a look at what we've come up with as a project team, and tell us how we can make this better. So we'll be sending out the link to that after this webinar so that you can take a look at it. I'm gonna go over to the, let's see, inventory project nomination form. So if you know of a project site that you'd like to submit for consideration for the inventory map, this is the form that we'd prefer that you use. So it gives a brief introduction of the project. It talks about, again, gives just kind of a description of what we mean when we talk about the categories. And then there's blanks for you to fill in to give us information about the project and who is proposing it. So the project contact information, who's nominating this site, and then site information. You can actually, you can upload a map image to tell us exactly where it is, who are the owners, is there currently public access? So we're really interested in whether, you know, the site is publicly owned, whether the public has access to the site. And then there's a chance for you to talk a little bit about what are the impacts at the site. And so there's these things that you can check. You can say other, and then you can categorize your project according to our project categories, or you can make up your own. And then there's a little text box where you can give us a brief description that's not covered by any of the rest of this stuff. And photos are certainly helpful. So you can upload photos using this button. We're very interested to know if the project you're nominating has already been identified. We know that cities and towns have done a lot of work through their hazard mitigation planning processes. And they've been a part of efforts that some of us have been involved in looking at vulnerability. And so if so, we'd love to know that. If you've already had your eye on this site for a while and it's documented, let us know in this box. And then are there any other projects that are in close proximity that could be thought of as related to this project? So the idea is we're identifying kind of bundles of projects that could be submitted for funding. We ask you to rate the importance, just so that we have that information. And then, as I mentioned, Roger Williams is going to be looking at developing legal guidance related to implementing these shoreline adaptation techniques. And so if there are any specific legal issues that have hindered you in thinking about this stuff, here's a chance for you to let us know about that too. And that doesn't necessarily have to be specific to the project you're nominating, but if it is, all the better. And then you're just going to submit, hit the submit button, and that information will come to us, and we'll be keeping track of it and organizing it by town so that we can follow up with each city and town individually. So that's our first tool. That's more of a desktop tool. We've also got the MyCoast app, which we hope that you all have accounts for MyCoast. If you don't, it's a great app that you can upload to your phone, create an account, and it allows you to nominate sites out in the field. But I'm going to let Janet Friedman walk us through MyCoast because she's the MyCoast guru.
Hi, yeah. It is, as Caitlin said, it's a phone app. I don't know if you can see in the corner the phone app. It's really easy it's a free download, and you have to register to be able to submit a form, but it's really easy. The registration is just your email address, what state you live in, because there's several different states that have MyCoast sites and they're each geared towards this particular state. And a password. It really isn't a big onerous thing. And so then once you've registered, if you're out in the field and you see potential sites, you can just take this app and take a picture of the site on your phone and fill out a really quick little checkbox report on it, so that then it can be, it's georeferences your site for you. It tells you what the tide and weather was at the time that you took the picture. And we can use that then to look at potential sites, especially if you're not exactly sure where it is on the map. This is a simpler approach to knowing all the legal issues and everything, but it will give us a first look, a first cut at some potential sites. And I'm just going to take you through this site. You can download them. You can also download them on your desktop computer if you want. I'm just going to run through it. You would just choose a photo or take one in the field. Then it will automatically time the photo from when you took it. There's you can put in a photo description. You might want to put in the SED, if you can say potential SED project or a SED project. And it's just a simple checklist on some of the things on the site. This can also be used to monitor a site once it has been restored, but we put in a salt marsh. It's between mean high and high low, mean high water and mean low water. There's no coastal infrastructure present. It's a very simple form. You look at site stability. This one is stable, vegetation covering, and dominant vegetation type. And again, you can leave any of these blank if you don't know. And then you would put in things like if there's core there, are there human impacts like runoff or foot traffic or vehicles. And then you just, again, you can upload data files if you want. You can put in comments. And the only thing is if you have it on your phone, it will geo-reference the site for you. But if you're going to be using this form, you'd actually have to put the location in yourself. So once you do that, it will, I guess it doesn't have a location. Oops, sorry. They just submit it. You ignore that because we don't have a location on that photo that we just loaded. But it will give you a little icon, and you move that to the site. But if you do it in the field, it automatically geo-references, and it's a really pretty simple way to submit sites. So
Great.
That's a potential.
Great, thanks, Janet. And just going back to the homepage here, MyCoast is just a really cool. Oops.
Go to Rhode Island.
Rhode Island MyCoast. It's just a cool tool. There's everything Janet just showed you is under this coastal resilience button. So if you notice, that's where she clicked. There's other features, Storm Reporter and King Tides, where people can record flooding events and storm damage. So you can check those out as well. But for nominating adaptation projects, this would be your best bet, this coastal resilience. So again, those projects will come in and we can look at those and review and group them and add them to the inventory.
Oh, and if you just go to, if I can
Sure.
just play with it for one more second, you can search the reports. And I did earlier put in a site. It should be on top. I took a screenshot from my computer. So it's a site where the report will come up for you. Here is, a beach, a coastal bank, and salt marsh. And the majority of the project that we were working on was the coastal bank work above mean high water. And it gives you this report. It generates a report for you. The location was right here with CRMC because I took it from my computer screen. That automatically comes out for you. So that will be what you end up submitting, what comes out at the other end.
Great. So that's the second nomination tool we've got for you to use. I think we can look at the chat box now. Do we have any? Doesn't look like we have any questions or comments, but if you've got them, please share them with us now. And you can all feel free to contact any of the project team with questions as you start to use these tools. We'll be following up with cities and towns once projects start coming in we'll be doing our own kind of reconnaissance as well and adding to the inventory. And so we'll be doing some follow-up outreach related to that.
And just to add to the map that Caitlin shared, Caitlin and Janet and I worked on a shoreline adaptation initiative starting in 2010 or 2011, where we conducted a lot of the field work for some of the assessments, the initial assessments, looking for potential sites where we could conduct some coastal adaptation projects. So some of those PowerPoints, those links that are connected to those icons, the information was collected in between 2011 and 2014. We've been updating them, but there are many sites that we haven't gone back to since that period of time. So if you see a site and you realize, oh no, we've done this since then, that's the reason where when the data was collected. And again, some of it is more recent, but the initial baseline assessment was done in the early 2011, 2014 time period.
Okay. So we have, oh, great. We've got some questions coming in. The first from Dennis Bowman. Hi, Dennis. Will projects be considered for design where there is a community-wide threat, but the shoreline adaptation must take place on privately owned, undeveloped beachfront, even with permission? So that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. It's really this question about ownership. For the most part, and you'll see in the inventory, most of these projects are on publicly owned lands, either municipal lands or state lands. And that's because, for the most part, for the implementation, we're looking to public funds. And so it's possible that we could consider projects on private lands, and we definitely nominate those and indicate in that box about ownership that they're privately owned. I think it would probably be necessary to talk about protection from development if we were going to go forward on a project for design and apply for construction or implementation. So we don't necessarily want to rule them out, but we do want to emphasize that these are projects that serve kind of a public purpose, that we want to be enhancing public access. And so if those things can be achieved, then I think we could probably consider privately owned lands. But in general, what you'll see in the inventory are public lands. I hope that's accurate to everyone else.
Most of them are public or protected by a land trust.
Right.
Public
So
being local, municipal, or state.
Right.
Or even potentially some federal. I don't know if we identified any projects on federal land.
Right.
On the refuges.
So the point being, they're somehow conserved. So yes, potentially private lands would potentially be eligible. So let's see. There is from Mike. Hi, Mike. There's an old boat in a salt marsh that the Land Conservancy of North Kingstown is interested in removing. Could this type of project be a candidate? That's a good question, and not knowing exactly what the situation is, that's kind of sounds like more like a marine debris issue. If it would somehow enhance the resiliency of the shoreline, it's potentially eligible. Again, I would encourage you, if you think it might be, then put it on a JOT form and submit it. We'll take a look. If you can get us photos, great. And yeah, we'd rather cast the net wide and eliminate things that aren't really eligible than miss out on an opportunity. So thanks for asking. And yeah, please go ahead and submit that as a nomination.
I have a comment, Caitlin. This is Teresa from URI. We would love to, everybody who's logged on to this webinar today, we would love to have you guys share this widely with folks in your town. Ideally, we would love to have all 21 cities and towns take a look at this map, consider the sites that have already been documented by Wenley, Caitlin, and Janet, and really take a hard look at, where candidate sites could be at the municipal scale, and also from maybe community groups. So we would love to have different sets of eyes on this database and as many submissions as we can get from you, because again, this just strengthens our database so that we are ready to go when funding opportunities present themselves. We will have this on hand to submit for that money, so we can bring as much adaptation funding to Rhode Island and really be able to benefit the cities and towns across Narragansett Bay on the South Coast. So I just want to really encourage you, if there are ideas that anyone has who's logged on today, to get this out to your boards and commissions, to town staff. We welcome all of those ideas. As Caitlin said, we'll be blasting out a follow-up email after today's webinar with the recording of this webinar for you to share with other people, and also with all the links to the maps and the jot forms and the submission forms and information on the field trip. So this is really the beginning of the public engagement part of the project, and we are really wanting to, we have a year and a half, I think, for this process.
Yeah.
And want to get as much engagement with the individual cities and towns as possible. So I just wanted to add that.
Great, thanks, Teresa. And I think too, we love your feedback on how this webinar was beneficial to you. If this seems like a good format, we wanted to use this to reach as many people as possible without taking too much of your day. And so if this is an effective form of getting the message out, we'd love to hear that too. Or if not, let us know. I think we're kind of testing the outreach process as much as we are building this inventory. And so we want your feedback. All right.
Any other questions from the chat box?
Oh, here we go. All right.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Liz. It's Liz at DEM. Okay. Can you send me an email that I can forward to the EC4 email list about all this? Of course, absolutely. Something that looks catchy and I can simply hit forward. Absolutely, yes. And if anybody else would like a similar email, again, we'll be following up widely with this list, but we've worked with our PR person here, Laura Dwyer, to develop a fact sheet, and we're working on updating the CRMC website with all this information as well. So hopefully I'll be able to send you just a single link for all of this information instead of, multiple links. But the goal is to have this all on the CRMC website. And so I'll send that to you, Liz. And also the fact sheet will be up there. So if you want to print that out, you can. Thank you. That's a great suggestion. Great. Okay. Any other questions? We did keep it under an hour, so that was the goal. Aha.
Hi,
John Nelson, hello. Could I make a pitch for recruiting interviewees for my dissertation research? Do you want to elaborate, John?
So I'm working on my dissertation at Brown University in sociology, and I see some familiar names from my research in the list up there. And I just want to encourage anybody, I'll put my contact information in the chat box to reach out to me if you work with communities on flood adaptation, sea level rise adaptation, even if they're inland communities. I think it's probably mostly a coastal crowd, which is great. I'd love to sit down and talk to you for an hour or two about sort of the politics that are involved and challenges or things that have helped you achieve adaptation in that community. That would be super helpful for me and folks at URI. I'd love to talk to you, Teresa. I finally got approval, so that's why I haven't asked any of you who may see me around. Now I have it, and I need data.
Yeah, John, just go ahead and put your contact email in the chat box for anyone that you just talked to on this, and we can follow up.
Yeah, we can include that in the follow-up materials as well. Thanks.
Okay.
Something John said reminded me that just the scope of this project. So this is a CRMC-led project. It is coastal. Not to say that there aren't flooding and adaptation issues farther upstream, but the boundary, the working boundary for this project is the beach SAMP boundary. So that's basically the coastal zone as determined by the 100-year storm and 7 feet of sea level rise. So technically that's as far inland as we're going. Don't let that stop you from nominating something if you think it's too far inland. Again, we will be vetting all this information and pulling out projects. I think one of the ideas that's come out of this is, I think this is a tool that we hope will be expandable. And so while we're focusing on the coast for now, it may be that we can add a kind of a riverine component with future funding support. So more is better than less. So I have, so 2 comments from Dennis. I would like to have a 1-page summary. Absolutely. We developed a fact sheet that we can send the link to for that. When do you want project nominations completed? We have, this funding goes through August of next year. So August 2020 is the end of this project. We hope to be wrapping up project nominations, late summer, early fall. It would be great if you can get us nominations by then. That said, we're going to keep this open. And so this can be a rolling process after that time. But in the fall, I think we're really going to start focusing on looking at these nominations, grouping them together, doing additional outreach with cities and towns to kind of vet them and see how we can move forward. And then we're going to move into the process of choosing that subset of projects for our design dollars. So whenever you want, nominate a project, but the sooner the better. But again, we'll be working on this for more than, the next year and then some. So that's a great question. Thank you so much, everyone, for interacting here. This has been great. If there's any other questions, I think we're just about ready to wrap up. So we thank you for being a part of CRMC's inaugural Zoom event. And please don't hesitate to be in touch with other comments and questions. We look for an email from our team following up with all of this stuff.
And forward it widely.
And forward it widely, please.
Yes, the site visits in particular.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I think we're going to sign off. Bear with us while we try to sign off of the event. And we hope to hear from all of you.
Go to stop share.
We'll go stop share.
Yep.
And
okay.